Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Welcome back to the Bible study that takes you places where no Bible study has taken you before, Daily Dose Radio. And this week we are looking at Psalm 132, the second half, beginning in verse 10. We're going to do this all week. Go through verse 10, from verse 10 to verse 18. And you're going to notice that in this week, we're going to see the mirror image. The second half is really a mirror image of the first half. And one of the dangers that we have, being serious now about, this psalm, is going verse to verse in the Psalms sometimes can be a problem because we can't see the forest because of the trees. We're looking at the trees individually, but we need to see the shape of the forest. So what we need to do today is just to back up a little bit. Let's get a perspective, know where we've been. Okay, we began in verse 1, Psalm 132. Remember, O Lord, David. And then we talked about his oath. He's not going to give sleep to his eyes. He's not going to his bed. He's not going into his house until he finds a place for the Lord. That's very important, his oath and finding the place. Not only is it the place talking about the temple, in David's case, because he never built the temple, we're talking also about the tabernacle where the ark sat in Jerusalem, but it's also the locale that we're talking about, Jerusalem itself. And so in that sense, David did fulfill his oath. And then we have in verses 6 and 7 a recitation in a poetic way which gives us the history of the ark. For over 20 years, it languished, really. I mean, that's a good way to put it. It languished, and the people did too. It languished in Kiriath Jearim, and then they brought it up to Jerusalem. David put it in the tabernacle he had built in Jerusalem for the ark. People came to worship there. They restored proper worship in a sense. And then we have verses 8 and 9, arise, O Lord, to your resting place. So this comes at the end of the construction of the temple. In Solomon's day, Solomon finishes the temple. This particular verse, these two verses, are found in verse 41 of 2 Chronicles 6, which is the story of, or one of the stories of the construction of Solomon's temple. Now we come to verse 10. For the sake of your servant David, do not turn away the face of your anointed. The Lord swore to David, a truth he will not turn from. From the fruit of your body I will place upon your throne. Now that's verses 10 and 11. Notice how much these two verses are like verses 1 and 2. Verses 1 and 2, remember, O Lord, David in all his affliction, which he swore to the Lord. He vowed to the strong one of Jacob. Now it's not David vowing or swearing, it's the Lord swearing. So the Lord swore to David. So in the first half of the psalm, David was swearing to the Lord. He was making a vow. Now the Lord is making his promise to David. He's not going to turn away the face of the anointed because the Lord is going to keep the promise that he swore to David, which is a truth he will not turn from. From the fruit of your body I will place upon your throne. Now, this promise is found in the original discussion that Nathan had with David when the Lord came to Nathan. He said, this is what you're going to say to my servant David, and it's a part of it. 2 Samuel chapter 7. Always remember 2 Samuel 7 is the place where David's covenant is found, and you'll find this particular idea there in verse 12. Then Solomon recites this at the construction of the temple when it's finished in 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 19. He reminds the Lord, this is what you've done. You've kept your promise. Because he swore to David, 2 Samuel 7, Solomon repeats that in 1 Kings 8, and that's the promise that is in play. And so we have a mirror image being created for us between the first half of the psalm and the second half. And remember, this is an ascent psalm. This is a song for those ascending. So this is the 13th step. And we step up on that 13th step, or that 13th way station before we get to Jerusalem. And now we're talking about David and his oath and the place and the blessing and the fulfillment with the temple and reminding ourselves of the Lord's promise to David. And all of this is a part of our worship as we approach. So one of the most important things faith has is the Lord's promise to us, always depending upon God's Word. That's where faith finds its strength. Join me again tomorrow. We're going to look at verse 12 only, and that'll be on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.